morning, good evening, good night, wherever or whoever you may be. I'm Alan Arante, and this is the Recluse podcast. Today's guest is Jordan Ward. His credentials include an AA from Oxnard College, a bachelor's degree in psychology, and a master's degree in education counseling from Channel Islands. Jordan recently organized a public event titled The Talk. The discussion focused on police brutality. The panel consisted of Jordan Ward himself, Dexter of Hip Hop Help, City Manager Alex Nguyen, Ross Fonts, Chief of Police Chief Whitney, and guest speaker Quinton Floyd, the cousin of George Floyd. In this conversation, we discuss Jordan's psychology background, the famous Stanford prison experiment. We discuss subtle and blatant forms of racism, the ways in which people attempt to make Black people feel comfortable, which comes off as obvious and disingenuous. We talk about his grandfather and the impact that he had on his life, and we discuss the problems and solutions related to police enforcement in today's society. You may notice a few hard cuts in the tape and some telephonic interference throughout the conversation, but that just comes with the territory of doing these remote interviews. It is the price I'm willing to pay for these conversations. It was my privilege to pick the brain of the magnetic force that is Jordan Ward. I can't wait to have a cup of coffee with him and talk again after this COVID business is through. It is my honor and privilege to present to you a portrait of Jordan Ward.
One of the first times I think I've ever been pulled over. And I kid you not, I'm going the speed limit. I'm doing everything right. You know, lights are on, seatbelts on. The officers on the PCH have like hiding spots. And I didn't see them. So here's this car, you know, lonely on the PCH, past like Zuma Beach, I would say. And they roll up on me on the side of me. They like get really fast. They flashed the light on me.
Oh my God! As you're driving.
No, first they were behind me. Yeah, so they check out my license plate, right? And then they're like, okay. Then they zoom up, flashed the light on me, saw that I was Black, stopped immediately, pulled back, and then pulled me over.
Wow.
So they thought, I believe they thought that the car was stolen.
Oh my God!
It was like there was no way that this Black guy, and then the tags, on the license plate was, you know, this clean guy, you know?
Oh my God.
So they were like, is the car stolen? And I was like, why would I be driving a stolen car? I was like, no, my name is on this car, you know? So I gave him all my information, and honestly, bro, it was crazy because, you know, you can tell they felt stupid. But I was like, look at the lengths that you guys go through, like, you know, just with this targeting. Like that's not the first time that happened, you know, with me.
And what does it feel like when so the cops get back in their car, they take off, you know, are you feeling violated? Are you feeling like you were just, you know, psychologically abused in some way? How does that feel?
I didn't feel psychologically abused. I immediately felt sorry for them.
Wow.
It wasn't like, oh, I'm angry because, you know, I was just like, man, I feel bad that they feel that way, or they feel like they have to do that. And I don't know, at the time I was like, I don't know where that comes from. And from jump, for me, I've always been against racism. I can't stand it.
Yeah.
That's why I got into doing what I'm doing now. I literally cannot stand it because there are differences, but I want to know like what makes them think that, you know, like that's okay. You know, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't understand.
I was curious. I was learning a little bit about you, a lot from the talk video on YouTube that you put out a little while ago. And you mentioned in your introduction that you were you graduated from Oxnard College with an AA. You then went to Channel Islands, and got a bachelor's in psychology, and then go on to get a master's in education counseling. It's interesting the way you're posing these thoughts. You're saying, you're wondering what makes them think like that. Do you feel like your psychology background comes into play at all with this work?
All the time. It's why I have the scope I have instead of having it's because psychology is the study of the brain, which is like go into the study of behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And now because I work in special education, we deal with behavior all the time, but this is a different type of behavior. This is I'm starting to notice that racism is a certain type of behavior, where it's almost like,
wow,
like almost from a narcissistic point of view.
Yes.
But just so blatantly, like some people are so blatantly racist. And then, we have Trump coming out and he enables it, like, ooh, it's okay,
Yeah, he's normalizing
but California's a little bit more, he's normalizing the racism. And, just having a lot of talks about that and just looking at it from a behavioral view.
Oh my goodness. That's interesting. That's a very interesting. I don't hear that a lot, actually. Racism as a behavior. Right. It's a behavior.
Yeah, it is a behavior. Yeah.
It's interesting because you were talking about like overt racism being a behavior, and it makes me think that more subtle racism, although it is manifested in subtle behavior, I think there's also, it goes back to the psychology component where it's really brain activity as well. It's brain activity manifested in behavior, and that's interesting.
Right. Well, so I know that I had multiple discussions with people recently from who are, behaviorists or who are MFTs and stuff like that.
And what's an MFT?
They're a marriage family therapist.
Ah, okay.
They have their licensed marriage family therapist.
Okay.
So pretty much, they're trying to psychology component on racism, which a lot of people don't agree with. Now, a lot of these people have a religious background, correct? And,
yes.
People do read the Bible, and from what I get from the Bible and what they get from it could be two different things. However, some messages are so clear in the Bible, right?
Right.
So I was arguing with someone that they are reading the scriptures of Bibles where it tells you to love all men and love thy neighbor and all this other stuff, but they choose not to do it. So for me, looking at it from a psychological standpoint, they're choosing not to obey something that they believe in. That right there is a behavior.
Oh God.
Right?
That's interesting.
You know what I mean?
Wow.
Like that is you're actively not choosing to obey that, but why? Because you don't like black skin, but why don't
I wonder if they even know though. They claim and they proclaim that they believe it, and they'll go tooth and nail with you to tell you they believe it, but their behavior speaks otherwise.
Right. Exactly. That makes no sense to me, right? So behaviorally, I'm like, wait a minute. I want to know why. Why, like, what makes you, like, in those moments when you're reading this and then you think of Black Lives Matter, what makes you want to say all lives matter?
Right.
Like, stuff like that.
I'm curious, what, to go back a little bit, what drew you to psychology in the first place?
Oh, man. So I'll go as early as speaking with my grandfather. And he was the first one that opened my brain to things, because my grandfather grew up in the East Coast in Connecticut, and they look how they grew up, because his father was a German and something else. And so, but he looked white, but made sure that all his kids knew that they were black, right? But
Wow.
they all are very light complected.
Mm-hmm.
So he would tell me, he said, "Hey, watch people's body movements when you're walking towards them. Watch how the lady watch how the old lady switches her purse over when you're walking.
Oh my goodness.
Watch how the man doesn't look you in the eye." And then, when he told me that and I experienced it, I started like clocking it in, you know? So right there I was like,
and how old were you around that time?
And then I want to say I was like between 8 and 9. Like he opened me up quick.
And you were oblivious beforehand, before he had said it? And
beforehand,
you
bro.
Think about it.
No, I'm telling you right now, I grew up not even recognizing that I was different in color.
Wow.
You know, like I wasn't like, oh my gosh, you're white, I'm black, like we're different. Like it didn't even matter to me.
Right, that's almost how it should be.
Open that up. It should be. You're right. It should be that way. But he opened that up for me, not to like, hey, you know, you're black or you're, you know, and they're white and they don't like us. It's almost like just be aware of it. So then I went to high school, and this is a different story, but when I would go to high school, a lot of people would openly tell me their problems that they had with one another, just within themselves.
Interesting.
And a part of psychology is listening.
Oh yeah.
And that's one of the skills that I have now, is that I can listen. And a lot of people don't need you to respond. They just need you to listen, you know?
Oh,
so
man.
Yeah. So from there, I was like, okay, I think that's something that I can see myself doing.
Wow. So you just had this nature about you.
Yeah.
People just felt like they could confide in you, and it sort of just manifested into a career for you.
Yeah. Yeah. You have no idea how many people that I just meet are so comfortable with telling me things that I've never asked about.
Within minutes? Like, people will start breaking things down for you within minutes of being around you, not even knowing who you are.
Yeah, not even knowing really who I am. They just break it down, and I guess I have such an accepting nature. You're like, I don't care what you look like or your background, and I'm all about culture. I love experiencing different cultures, so I'm open to meeting new people all the time. So I make people, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead. You make people feel comfortable.
No, I'm just saying. I was going to say I make people feel comfortable and relaxed around me. Like there is no bias. I'm not judging you.
Oh, I feel like that's rarer and rarer. In this world, it's so easy to put yourself in a shell, and you see somebody not acknowledge you at all. Like I have this experience at the skate park often, and it could just be my sensitivity or my insecurity, but I have this thing where I try to acknowledge people. I don't want to just pretend like you're not there if we're in the same room, depending on the situation. And I get this sensitivity about me at the skate park when a lot of times I don't know what it is about skateboarding, but sometimes people have this like bravado or something where it's a weakness to acknowledge the other. And it sometimes my feelings are hurt. It's like, hey, aren't I somebody around you? And right. I try to give people that gift of acknowledgement, like, hey, I see you. And I just want to say what's up to let you know I'm not a threat. I'm here to be a friend. And it sounds like people notice that about you, that you're just, I don't know, this caring and all ears kind of person.
Right. And some people don't want to see that in other people, like, I'm starting this new thing that I will be launching really soon. It's called Me and My Skin. Now, there's me, the person, And then there's everything that my skin comes along with stereotypes.
Ooh, interesting.
And that not only that your own culture places on you, but other cultures place on you too. So when they see me, they see everything that my black skin represents.
Oh, wow.
But they think that represents, and not knowing me. So when they meet me, I break down all of their stereotypes. I blow them away, because you only know bias and stereotypes about me and my black skin, and not necessarily knowing me, the person. So when I put out that vibe, it's easier for them to open up and talk to me, and I'm really accepting. So, yeah.
Wow. Do you get this? I read this book recently. I hope I'm not getting the name wrong. It's by Frantz Fanon, and it's called Black Skin, White Masks. I think that's the title. But in it, he describes this feeling as a black man. You know, he wrote this in, like, I want to say the 40s or something like that. And he describes this experience of being in a train and, you know, a little white boy, you know, being frightened and gripping his mother's, like, arm and saying, I'm frightened. And he's just, you know, by the way, he's educated, and, you know, there's nothing threatening about him other than the fact that he's black. And he has this experience of not just being an individual, but being three people at the same time. And what he means is he's one, a representation of his ancestors. Two, he's a representation of his skin. And I'm forgetting the third, but basically the point is that he doesn't just exist as an individual, but he's always representing, it's his race. That's the third one. He's always representing his race and his ancestors. As a black man, do you feel like you're not just yourself, but you're always having to represent black people in general?
Well, yes and no. So I know that my views are different from other black people. So I can't say that I always represent them. But what I will say is that I know that other people will put me in a box along with other black people. So how I represent myself also could represent them, because they're not looking at us as individuals. And I will tell you that, you know, there is a lot of differences within black communities already.
Yes.
So I can't say that I represent black people, you know, wholeheartedly, but I do represent my family, of course. And I'm proud of that. I'm proud of what I've already been doing, and I'm at peace with that. Like, I don't feel like I'm doing anybody wrong.
Yeah.
But that just comes with conversation. Yeah.
So, for instance, this is like I'm about to ask like an awful question, but I'm reminded of I'm reminded of this question by that piece of the book that I just referenced, where the child's afraid and grips his mom because he's in the presence of a black person. Some people, they almost want to ask, like, you know, how do I act around a black person? You know, you were mentioning how people, like, will grip their purse and they'll go to the other side of the road. So if someone were to ask you, you know, and I know it's a terrible question, but how do I act around a black person? You know, what do you say to that kind of question?
Like I said, they come with bias. They come with stereotypes, and I think that shapes how they're supposed to act. So they try hard not to act that way. But as a black person, though, you see it.
Oh my gosh, yes.
I see it all the time. You know, they're trying to be overly comfortable, but I know they're not comfortable. and then, you know, like you see guys who would never give you a head nod or what's up, and then they do that, and it's like, well, I didn't need that. You know what I mean?
Right.
I just need a, hey, hello. You know, like, yeah, like they just try to make you like overly feel comfortable, but in reality, they're not comfortable.
Oh my God.
And I, you know, I see it all the time. Like, oh, that was funny. I'm not offended. I'm not offended. I just think it's interesting because those same people probably don't speak or know any black people
Right.
to
Right.
have those conversations.
Mm.
Or even if they do, they haven't had the conversation. So I'm like, I tell people all the time, especially in this day and age, the conversation needs to be had. Whatever you're feeling, we should speak about it.
Yes.
And if they have an ear to listen, then so should we. And then we should also educate one another. I don't see what the
Right.
problem is with that.
So, you know, there's this issue of black people. So I've seen where, you know, everybody treats them as if they're like these educators, you know, like you have all the answers about racism just because you're black. It's, you know,
Yeah.
how do you feel about that?
Okay. So I feel now I will tell you there are some black people who are like, no, go educate yourself. Right.
Right.
But there are also people like me who are willing to have the conversation no matter how many times you're repeating yourself or whatever.
Yes.
The conversation needs to be had. It needs to happen. So I wouldn't say that, you know, it's a bad thing. I look at it as opportunity. It's an opportunity right now because they're willing to listen. So we can't be, you know, there's a lot of black people out there who are like, they're never going to get it, you know, the kind of thing. But my mentality and, you know, me being positive, and I would like to believe if the person is reaching out to you, then that's a good sign. They want to understand, even though they'll never understand it, or at least they want to try to understand. So I think it's my obligation to try to get them to understand, you know, I look at it as something that, you know, we should try to do, you know, as much as possible.
I think I wonder sometimes if and I'm just speculating. I don't know anything for sure, but I'm just speculating out loud. I wonder if some people in that position, like non-black people, when they approach a black person with these conversations and these questions, I wonder if there's some fraction of those people who want to just be absolved of their racism by asking these questions. You know, they feel guilty for not engaging with people of color, and by interacting with a black person and asking these questions, they feel absolved of their subtle racism. Do you think that's a bad thing, even if that's the case?
Listen, whatever baby steps they take, I think you should take. So if that's how they feel, and honestly, I'm a firm believer that no subtle racism or racism, they're not going to come out and say exactly how they feel 100% of the time. So, but I think that just makes them a little bit more comfortable with being around black people. Not that they're 100% comfortable, but just to say that little thing or ask that little question, it makes just a little bit closer, and okay, I'm getting out of my way a little bit. I extended my hand. But maybe it can go further. Over time, it will go further. So it's a small win, and it's very small. It's minuscule, but, you know, I think it's not enough, but it's a start in the right direction.
So before we I want to ask you some questions about your grandfather and about your the event you recently organized, the talk. But before we get to that, I have a couple more questions about your psychology background. So first of
Yeah, go
all,
ahead.
you got a bachelor's in psychology, so obviously you took a bunch of psychology courses.
Yes.
What were you interested in?
Oh, yeah.
Did you like abnormal psychology, developmental, cognitive, social? What areas in psychology really excited you?
It's very interesting. Like, cognitive was very hard.
Yeah.
With taking it as a class, but it was very interesting. Behavioral neuroscience
Oof.
was, just was so deep, but I took away a few things. Like, nobody goes into that class and remembers everything that came out of it. But but there is one thing that from the brain's perspective, and you know how people say like we don't use 100% of our brains and all that
Yes,
crap.
yes.
People say that. That is totally false. We use 100% capacity of our brains. The brain is so amazing. It's such a supercomputer. It's you're getting feels from your nerve endings at the same time, like simultaneously doing other things while it's controlling all the rest of your organs.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
the brain is it's just amazing. Now, as far as like behavior goes, like um I took a class on it was called psychology and religion.
Ooh.
That class blew me away. I'm a student of psychology on across the board. So I've worked in um a lot of areas where you're diagnosing or you're dealing with children's behavior. But this psychology of religion class was very interesting to me because it broke down um, why people in religion how they are. They can either use God against you
Mm-hmm.
or they use it as a weapon, and that it just broke down like the attachments of to God and how they use it against one another.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say like there's one area in particular in psychology where it was like, oh man, like that's the one for me. But I liked all of them.
Some
I liked
people,
all the aspects of it.
some people are firm behaviorists in the sense where they think that every movement I make, like for instance, is literally a consequence of my environment and my circumstances. Do you believe that, or do you think that humans have more free will than that?
Free will. That's interesting. I believe the environment shapes you a little bit, but it all depends how much you let that environment influence you. So I was fortunate enough. I grew up. My mother is amazing. She's very intelligent, but she's also religious. But she never the village that you grew up in. She never really forced religion on down my throat.
Mm-hmm.
Let me figure out my own. And I think I think you have to take that approach. Like, the idea of the first time I heard someone say that there is no God, that scared the hell out of me. Right. So, but I did my own research, it's like she allowed me to do my own research. And when I went to college, it was really eye opening because science is fact based.
Mm-hmm.
And religion is so faith based.
Yes.
And I walked away with questions on both sides, so, I think you educating yourself, if you want to educate yourself and not just believe wholeheartedly in your village that is raising you. I mean, you take those experiences for what they are, but you also should want to educate yourself. So I don't believe the environment totally shapes me all the way.
Right.
But it does play a hand in it. I would say 50%.
So, you took a bunch of psychology courses, and I imagine you took a lot away with you when you finished that bachelor's. Are there any, or were there any psychologists or theories or even experiments that you really just think about still? I'll just give you a couple examples because I took I think 3 psychology courses at Channel Islands. And my God, I took so much away from them. So you as a major must have taken even more.
Yeah.
For instance, I'll just reference a couple. I really like Piaget, for example. I really I really like these the next couple experiments that I'm going to list, which are very famous, of course. So you don't have to have an education to know about them. So Pavlov's dog, for instance, that behaviorist experiment, and then Milgram's experiment, where he has teacher and learners, and one of them is shocking the other, so they think, and it's like an experiment about humans and how willing we are to hurt each other just because an authority is telling us. Or then the Stanford prison experiment where power again. So just in general, are there any experiments or theorists that you really just think about still?
The prison experiment was so wow. You gave these guys a uniform and then they totally abused that power, and that's not even who they were as people. But that one was so and I to this day, when I see that, you put on a uniform and you become this other person. And that's part of my when I see officers now, I'm just I wonder if that's really you or is that the uniform? Don't you think about that now?
Oh, it's totally connected. It just has to be.
It has to be. All of a sudden you put this uniform on and you're this person that just can feel like you're invincible.
And the officers, though, what's interesting is that they actually have power. So the experiment, the officers in the experiment didn't actually have power. It was perceived power.
Yes.
And we saw the consequences of just perceived power. Now imagine these police officers who have actual power and lethal force at their disposal. Yeah. It's frightening, honestly.
Exactly. And it's frightening because they can use that at a snap of a finger, they know they have it. It secures it. They feel secure with it.
And oh my gosh, it's so frightening because that's the whole point of this whole problem we have now. And it's always been a problem, but all the Black Lives Matter movement and all the protests, that's the point, is that these cops and what's even scarier is that even when they do commit what I would even call an atrocity against another person, they have the fist of the law behind them, supporting them, defending them, protecting them, encouraging them on some level. And that's what's so scary about it.
Right. So I took this class. It was social psychology. And I always tell this story because the person I worked with was in the class with me at the time. And the topic was aggression. Now, she was saying that humans are aggressive by nature. And I was like, I guess. I didn't really agree nor disagree. But then she said police officers have to be aggressive. And I said, excuse me, I'm the only one. First of all, I'm the only Black person in this class. And 2, I'm the only one that raised their hand in that class and disputed this.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, so so I told the lady and I said, excuse me, so you're telling me that cops have to be aggressive figures to be a police officer? And she said, yes, absolutely. She used these words, to save someone's life, you have to be aggressive. I said, but you know what? Cops are not looked at as really good people. Do you think that's a good approach? And so it was interesting. There was like, some Caucasian female. She turned around and she was like, have you ever had a good experience with the police officer? I said, excuse me, no, I haven't.
Wow.
I said, to this day, if they roll up on me, I panic and I did nothing wrong. She goes, oh, well, I just feel really bad for you because I had really good experiences, blah, blah, blah. I said, that's good for you.
Yeah.
But in the neighborhoods that I grew up in and where I'm from and other poverty-stricken neighborhoods, cops are not looked at as good people. So I kid you not. Like my whole point of view, and like when I was trying to get with that was, you can still be a kind person and still save someone's life. You can still be a kind person and pull out a gun and protect yourself and protect others.
Yes.
That, to me, being aggressive had nothing to do with being a police officer. And when I tell you, when they were looking at me like I was crazy, it was so uncomfortable.
Oh my gosh. Oh yes.
Because they were like, yeah, you have to be this way or else. And I was like, well, people get beat up and die for no reason because they're overly aggressive, and that doesn't make any sense to me. So now we fast forward to now, to all the killings that's been happening. And I promise you, I wish I can go back to that instructor and ask her, what's her opinion now? Because black people were dying for no reason. Hispanic men are getting beat up and getting jumped by cops for no reason. And then white people who do something wrong, they're getting handed water. So I was like, so what's your views now? I wish. And then that person I was in the class with, I was like, you didn't even have my back. And she was like, I didn't agree with you then, but I see what you're saying now. I was like, exactly. Like, I was like, that didn't make any sense to me. And that's one of the, something that experience I still think about. Like, I wonder if people still feel that way. Like, cops have to be this aggressive figure when they should be more public figures. They should be more, I'm here I am you. I'm a part of you. I want this neighborhood to be, we have to police the neighborhood together. Not like me versus you.
Chief Whitney said, every interaction we make with someone in the community is an opportunity to make a positive investment. So,
yes,
I'm curious about, so Chief Whitney seems to be on board with that concept that you just raised of, it's not you versus me. It should be us protecting each other. Is there a feasible path to that? I mean, is that even possible?
I believe it is. For one, so what we're trying to do, me and a few other men, there are people who come to these neighborhoods like Oxnard who are not from here. And which is fine. I mean, you're an officer. However, to police the people, you must know the people, right? Like, if you're coming from Simi Valley, I don't expect you to come to Oxnard and know the population and know how to handle the population. For me, and what we're trying to do is get these officers a more rigorous training, not only diversity training to know your personnel. So know the black community, know the Hispanic community, and don't come over here with your bias, because honestly, how they're policing. And I'm just using Oxnard as an example.
Right.
because how they're policing, they obviously don't know how to handle the people. They just think that we're all crazy. We're all crazy and we're all dangerous, right?
Yeah.
But that's not the case. Come out here and be with the people. So, growing up, I'm sure you know about the PAL, right? The Police Activities League. Police Activities League is a recreational space that they have is at the old Oxnard High School on 5th Street, and I can't remember the other street name. But it's off of 5th near the fire station behind Vaughn's on 5th Street. And kids go there, they do sports, they have boxing tournaments there, they have all that recreational stuff there, and it's called the Police Activities League. Now, back in the day, police officers used to come through and help coach and be a part of the community. Now, from what I'm hearing, police officers don't show up there at all.
Wow.
So I'm sitting here thinking the best way to be a part of the community, in my opinion, that's just one aspect though. You send these officers who are not, culturally diverse, or, you know, they're not,
right.
They don't have a lot of diversity under their belt. Send them there, because those same kids that you're going to be working with are going to be the same kids that you're going to be seeing on the street.
Yeah.
You know, so go there, get to know these kids, get to know their situation. And that way you're not looking at all of us like a threat. You're not looking at us all that we're crazy. We just have differences amongst culture, and our circumstances are different from Simi Valley to here. You know, like, it's very different. I wouldn't expect them to know off top, but you know, you should want to understand.
Yeah.
Instead of coming over here with your bias. So one of the fellow officers had told me one time how there's a 23-foot rule, or 21 feet, that a black man can run after an officer, and if he doesn't get that gun out within the 21 feet, then he's done. That's an active police tactic that they use.
And you said you didn't you didn't say black man on accident. You mean what you said. You said it. I mean,
I mean what I said. Yes. Because picture this.
Yeah, go ahead.
Picture this. I mean, that was the story that was told to me. Mm-hmm. Let's picture this, right? All you hear about black people is that they're big, they're strong, they're fast, right? And then you view us then you're told that we're criminals. So when you approach the job and you're come encounter with the black man, those are your thoughts. They're big, strong, fast, they're dangerous. So, of course, the gun is going to get pulled when that's all you feel like you know. You know, the mentality just needs to be changed. And that comes with cultural diversity, cultural understanding. You know, I'm not going to, walk into, apply to a Mexican restaurant and not know the menu. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, why wouldn't I know the menu? Why haven't I tried everything? You know, something like that. Like, you need to know where you're working and the people that surround you.
I know, and it sounds so obvious. It sounds like you posed already a few solutions, just working with the community. You know, there should be almost a training there should be some training or regular community events. That way the community feels like they know the officers. That way the officers feel like they know the community. And just to back up a little bit, just to give people perspective of, who you are. Jordan Ward, you and Tamar Lee, I believe, is your buddy's name, who organized this event called The Talk, and which, by the way, that event I didn't watch every minute. I just didn't have time to watch every minute, but the production was amazing. The guests were so they weren't just random people. They were really people that made sense to be there. And it looks like
Yes.
the motto or the mantra is expression, dialogue, and change. What does that mean to you?
Yes. Well, for one, when I put this together, I really wanted the people to express how they're feeling. When I put this together, I really wanted the community to come together. I've been in Oxnard. My mother was going to college at UC Riverside, so I was back and forth in Oxnard until we decided to move out here after she was done. And so I didn't feel that Oxnard was really, really together until Ahmaud Arbery got shot and his life got taken away from him. And we did a protest on Victoria, and I felt ecstatic. I was like, oh my gosh, Oxnard. It was a small group of people. It wasn't like the protest that you saw me at, which was even bigger. And I was like, okay, so Ahmaud Arbery, we did that. We come together as, in Oxnard like that. And that's the first time I felt like, all right, we have support from one another. Mm-hmm. So fast forward to the talk, I wanted to give the people that same kind of support, however they're feeling. And I had a lot of questions because watching George Floyd for 8 minutes with that knee on his neck, I was sitting there like thinking, what would have happened if I ran over there and just threw myself at those officers so that man can at least have his life? I know I go to jail. They probably would have threw the gun. They probably would have shot me. Or what kind of ways where I could have interrupted that man, so George Floyd could save his life, could still have his life. And so that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to create a platform for the people. It just so happens that, which I totally respect and I applaud the Chief of Police and the City Manager, Alex Nguyen, to come out and speak on behalf of these issues. And I totally respect them. And we've had meetings with them, and I'm happy they came out. But more than that, I'm happy that they were there to listen and hear the people, because we are part of the community, and I really wanted the people to feel that we're moving in the right direction, or how can you assure us of that? So we really wanted to hold the Oxnard Police Department accountable for actions moving forward. Not to say that they're doing these things, but just for preventative measures.
Yes. And you had I noted the people that spoke at that event. Dexter of Hip Hop Help.
Yeah.
And yes. Surprisingly, the cousin of George Floyd, Quinton Floyd, that was very surprising.
Man. I talked to him a little bit. We spoke briefly before he went on, and so funny story. Prior to the event, I had no idea he was coming. Wow. This wasn't scheduled. Him being there was not scheduled. We took a little break, and right when we're getting ready to start, Dexter, he's like, "Hey, George Floyd's cousin is coming."
Wow.
And I was like, "No way!" Like, he was like, "Yeah, he's coming," and I was like, "Wow, that's big time," And so I'm telling my people, my staff, and they're like, "Oh, no way," So we took like a brief 5 minutes, and then boom, there he was. And his speech was powerful.
Yeah, I saw it. It was touching.
Yeah. So I was totally surprised like everybody else.
Yeah, Quinton Floyd, he actually got emotional. He had to walk away from the mic as soon as he started talking about his children, about having to educate them.
Yeah.
And how
Yes.
I don't even know how to describe it, but just how the emotions that come over you by the fact of you having to explain this to your kids. And I think you've actually had that
Yes.
experience too. I know you posted I don't know, maybe it was a month or two ago, about your daughter being afraid, I think, to go to school or something like that because cops,
Yeah,
she believed cops are
she
killing black people in the streets.
yeah, she's afraid to go outside. Yes. And which is so my kids, I co-parent, and my kids live in a predominantly safe environment in the Pacific Palisades. And they don't experience stuff like this, right? But like in their world, that stuff doesn't happen over there. But I have to let them know that you have to be mindful of this stuff. So when she's hearing this, my daughter's very bright and she asks the right questions. Why did they kill us? Why did they do it like this? Why? And then so when I sometimes I don't have answers for her, like where I'm trying to figure that out too. I'm right with you. So she was like, I don't want to go outside, and it's a shame. It's a shame that she has to feel like that, uh, in 2020. And, part of me, like I said, and I didn't want to accept that for their reality. I have to start making changes, or we as a people have to start making changes so they don't have to grow up in that kind of sick reality.
Yes.
It's bad enough that we have to go through it. I don't want my children to go through that. And like you said earlier, where I was oblivious to color, it didn't matter to me, but all of a sudden, now that this is happening, I have to make her aware of it, which is sad.
As a
Sad that I have to
parental,
do that.
it's sort of a parental duty, and it's a shame that it is. You might feel
Yes,
like
yeah,
you're not preparing her for the world if you don't have these talks with her, because she is a black person.
exactly. No, I was like, not only that, she's a black woman, which is one of the most disrespected. So I have to let her know that you're not only just a woman, you are a black woman.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And it's interesting because we're talking about, how your children are afraid because of what they see on the TV. And it's eerily reminiscent to what you experienced. I think at the talk you referenced your earliest memory being that of Rodney King being beat in the street by a group of police officers. Take me back to that memory. I mean, what were you feeling when you saw that? Did you feel like, wow, that could be me? That's a black person just like me.
No, it's more of like I was so too young to understand why that man got beat over a wallet. Like I didn't ask, but it was all over the news. Like a lot of stuff were happening in the 90s. When you're a child, but that right there, you never forget that. And then, the severity of it when I was like how serious it was. I didn't know how serious it was as a child until when I think about it now, I'm like, whoa, that was happening when I was a child. I'm a grown man now, and it's still happening. Even worse, because Rodney King didn't die,
Yeah.
Black men now and Hispanic men, they're dying. And I was like, okay, this has to stop.
Do you envision a world or a country or a city where there are always police officers? In your mind, are police essential to the community? Do you imagine a community that doesn't have police officers? How do you see the future of things?
I believe that police officers, I believe, I wouldn't say that they're necessary, but I do believe that a community does need policing. Now, do I believe that officers should have all of the responsibility of dealing with people? No, I do not. There are people like me who are educated that know how to handle homelessness, right? Or they know how to handle people with substance abuse, or there's, alcohol, people who are, or outside drunk, or people with mental disabilities, intellectual disabilities. There are departments that, the officers don't need to have all that pressure in all those areas. So even if it's like domestic disputes, maybe, there's experts on that come out and handle situations, and it doesn't have to all the pressure doesn't have to be on the officer.
Right. Right. They're just spread too thin.
Cause they're yes. Like if they were just literally dealing with crime, cause crime is an issue. Officers deal with crime. But, there's a call, I'm having a domestic dispute. Okay. We'll send the domestic people out there,
Right.
We're having, this homeless man is giving us trouble. Okay. Let's figure out, how to help this homeless person. The mental health, is getting there, so stuff like that. It just needs to be distributed, not to say that officers don't need to be around, because it could get physical and it could get dangerous. And
yes.
I'm not saying that, but the de-escalation process of these incidents doesn't have to end up, with somebody face down and hands behind their back and then knee on your neck or on your back. Right. Or being shoved somewhere, it doesn't have to end up that way. And if the videos that we see, there's no de-escalation happening. It's either is their way or it's no way. So we need to get back to de-escalation.
Yeah, there is just so much work to do. I think some of it's frankly, now that all of this is coming out, it's frankly just obvious and common sense. We're just seeing the problem, and it's it's like a mechanic almost. A mechanic can look at an engine and hear the sound and see what's happening and then diagnose it and correct it. That's kind of our experience right now. We're seeing these videos with people with no de-escalation at all. It's like we're looking at the problem and we're finally imagining solutions. And there's a lot of work to be done. And I appreciate the work that you're doing. And by the way, have you gotten any pushback? Because, for example, one of the Oxnard protests that I went to, they did not have anything nice to say about Chief Whitney. They were calling them pigs and all this stuff, right? I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I'm curious if you got any pushback by having him on the stage with you.
I did. Well, I did prior, before I did it. So I don't know if you. I think you were around then when we were supposed to have it June 3rd instead of June 13th.
Yes,
right?
yes.
So what happened was people were planning on showing up and rioting. And
oh my gosh!
So I had a tip from one of my friends who was there at the protest, who gave me the megaphone.
Yeah.
And she was telling me how people want to show up to this event and have signs and yell out certain things. So I had to make a video. I said, listen, we are all about solutions here. If you're not about solutions, please do not show up. And I had to set the tone because at the time, the rioting and looting and stuff was big across the nation. So I think people were looking at that feeling like, okay, well, Oxnard needs to get, the police department needs to get set on fire. I had a woman comment, I think it's still there on one of my posts, that I sound like a police officer.
Wow.
She said I sound like a police officer, which in my take, I think she meant to say like I sound like an Uncle Tom.
Right.
And I was like, whoa, like, so I DM'd her back. I was like, hey, so by me trying to figure out solutions, you're calling me this, like, I sound like a police officer. In reality, like, what are your, like, protesting is cool. I love protests. But for me, what's happening after the protest? It just so happened that the talk and after the protest we did on that Saturday where you saw me leads to the talk. And what I loved about that protest that day is that we didn't see not one police officer.
Yeah.
Not one. Did you see one?
Yeah, no, I did not at that one. The next one, I think there were, but
so yeah, because July 3rd, what the people who were against me made a flyer and said, we don't want to talk to the police. So for me, that was a direct shot at my event, right?
Yes.
They didn't want to have a sit down. But my whole thing is, what is your solution? Because these same people who are wanting to protest, they have no solutions. So I'm forward thinking. I'm not going to put my energy into something that's not going to have a positive outcome. So we can protest all day. But if we're not talking to the right people to make change, then what is the point of that protest? So the talk for me was a progressive act. Whether you believe the officers or not, it's still moving forward to create change.
Yes. I think I imagine the difference is that you're willing to work with the system and to at least have people seated at the table to discuss this, both sides, as opposed to maybe some of the activists that just simply don't believe the system can work for them and that they just want to topple it over. Is that a fair statement?
That's very fair. Yes. Very fair.
Well, I just have a few more questions. I get the feeling that we could just talk forever, and I love that feeling.
Oh, for sure.
I love that feeling. Maybe we can do it again, but maybe we can sort of just end this.
Sure.
We can end this talk with just sort of honoring your grandfather and why that touched me so much. You posted something recently about him, and it touched me because my grandfather passed away from lung cancer in 2016, and he was like my father. You know, I have all these early memories of him, and I'm curious how similar your experience is to mine. What role did your grandfather play for you?
Oh man, my grandfather was, he from the stories, he would tell me as a child, he was like almost like a savior, but most importantly, we created this really good bond that was unbreakable, unshakable bond that we created. And, from what I'm hearing, like he wasn't like a kid person, he wasn't like but me being his first grandchild, like he became like this kid person. And they would tell me how when I was 3 and he never traveled with kids, but he took me to, on a plane with him back to Connecticut. And he would tell me all the stories on that plane where everyone was like in awe of me and they wanted to hold me. And he said I lit up the whole plane, stuff like that. And, those memories, like I wish that I had in my memory bank, cause he made it sound so special, and growing up, he was an electrician. So I got to see him with his trade and he approached the electrician business like it was just the easiest job, just watching him work.
Did he like to work?
But he loved it. The way I've never heard anybody speak about electricity the way he spoke about it. He was like he made electricity like a passion. And he would tell me about like he didn't really give me like the history of like Nikola Tesla or Edison and all that kind of stuff. But the way he talked about it, he was so passionate about it. But he made it look easy. And, you hear all these bad things about electricity and how fast it is and how it moves. And he wasn't afraid of anything like that. He just went in there and did his business. But what's cool about him is, he used to do a lot of work for the greenhouses and stuff like that. So those same Hispanic men that are working in the greenhouses too.
Oh wow!
When he started, I tell you, he started breaking out Spanish and talking to them. I was like, whoa! Like that's something that I always found out something new about him. He would like start talking Spanish to these men, and he had their respect, and I think that's where I got it from, because wow. Like no matter like how you're working or who you are or whatever, he was just kind to everyone. It didn't matter. So I took that same mentality, like everyone's still a person, bro. Like it doesn't matter, your status or whatever.
Did he?
We're all equal.
Did he influence you in terms of how you are raising your own kids? The way he was with you. Is there anything about that relationship that kind of drips into your relationship with your kids?
Yes. I think how open he was with conversation with me, just talking to me about everything, is something that I do with my children. It's not so much that I'm like, how I view having children is almost like how he viewed it. Like I'm not sure I am a parent technically, but I'm also raising individuals. I'm not just trying to, want them to be like me. I want them to just be overall good people. And that's what I felt like I was getting from him. Just a person who's just open and sees things, and just being an overall good person. And but also, like knowing your worth. This man would. I'm telling you, if you are unsure of yourself as a person, he will clean that up for you. He will let you know how special you were as a person, and what you could do is limitless. And I always would cherish that. And then there was a point where, even though, up until his death, when I would see him, he would always let me know how amazing I was, and I, it's to the point where like, I didn't need those words anymore, because I know it, because he was telling you that from jump. And, that's something that I do for my children as well. I keep that going with them.
Did he live long enough to see your success? I mean, you got a bachelor's, a master's, and you're just this figure. Did he live long enough to see that?
Yes, he did see me, receive all my accolades, and they did know about it. I don't believe he got to see the talk, though. I don't believe he did. I think he was alive, of course, when that happened.
Just towards the end.
But just towards it, I don't know if he got a chance to watch it, or heard the buzz about it. And I didn't get a chance to speak to him about what I did. So I'm not sure, but all the rest of the stuff, yes.
And do you think, obviously a silly question, but do you think he was proud of you?
Oh, most definitely. Yeah, I do. I know it in my heart, and that's what brings me peace. Like, I know that I represented him, and exceeded his expectations, and to carry on his name, whatever I continue to do will continue to make him proud. So yes, I do believe that, he was very proud. Yes.
Jordan Ward, you just have this magnetic presence, even through a phone call. And I hope someday, when COVID's over, we can have some coffee sometime or something.
I'll be more than happy to do that, bro. No problem.
I just have one more question for you, and you can answer it any way you like.
Yeah.
Jordan Ward, who the hell are you?
Who is Jordan Ward? Let's see, man. I used to always say that I'm just a cool, calm, and collected person. But now I'm just saying that Jordan Ward is just a person that's for the people, is for peace and understanding, and I'm a person that loves to learn and learn about others, and just trying to do right and go about my purpose in the right way. So that's who I am.